It feels like building a community has always been a major part of your life. And I've heard from someone that you used to host founder type of breakfasts in Sao Paulo during your
that wasn't even
Viva Real.
That wasn't even my idea, but there was 5 of us and we would get together and have, a little breakfast with very high caliber founders during my cohort of, building. I think that was more out of necessity for me. I was alone, didn't know a lot of people. You know what it's like if someone has a shared experience, there's a kinship. If you're on the other side of the world, you're in Southeast Asia and you run into a founder, there's like a lot to talk about. There's a connection. There's a shared empathy, understanding. I was searching for that. Like I was needing that. I was feeling lonely, like I was struggling. Every founder goes through lots of ups and downs. I like to say your best day and your worst day are the same day. And having somebody to be able to share that with, learn from, I think that's something that was in kind of the DNA of building my company. We built a community of real estate companies. So there's always been a bit of a community element, and I kind of understood the power of that. And I've kind of transferred it to multiple phases of whether that's from Viva Real to Latitude. Camus doing some stuff in the tax world.
You have podcasts, right? That is also events.
Yeah, and I'm going to be doing way more stuff in San Francisco now that I'm kind of steady there. One of our partners, Louisa, she's coming out to San Francisco, and I'm going to be hosting dinners and gathering. I think it's been the DNA of what we've built, and that's just kind of how we've done things.
It's very interesting because there's so many people who talk about building communities, and we're community forward and so on and so forth. But a lot of them end up being just the networks, What do you think are the critical distinctions between strong community versus a network of people, and how do you cultivate this?
It's very clear. It's a great question. You need to cultivate a give first mentality. If there is like a willingness to help out and build value for the other person, that is the absolute kind of like DNA of a good community, because the value then is like you feel like obligated to help other people and you want to help other people. I sold my company. We signed the deal March 4th, 2020 at Viva Real. Grupo Zap, and I'm here figuring out what I'm going to do next. And I had this realization where I'm like, I want to figure out how to elevate other founders, and I made it a mission to I'm going to help as many founders as I can without expecting anything. And it started by taking about 150 Zoom calls from founders. Founders that had a term sheet pulled during COVID, or that had to fire 90% of their team, or whatever it was, or things were actually taking off during COVID, and they're figuring out what, how what are the things they need to.
Growth. Yeah.
So I think that was just really how it started for me, and that kind of compounded. And what I realized is that amazing thing happened. Like, look, I respond to messages on LinkedIn, random people, and I've ended up doing investments in founders. And, I go back to Viva Real, my first serious investor, I was able to get in touch with him from a Facebook message that I sent him. And this guy saved the company, wired $300K when we had $87 in the bank account and 25 employees, and just completely changed the trajectory of my business. I just think that there's, of course, it's harder now because I get a lot more messages than I used to, and I can't respond to every single one of them, especially when it's like AI slop in my inbox. Then I'm just like instant,
delete.
Yeah, ciao. I can tell the difference between a well-crafted message that shows you didn't just ask Claude what you should send me, and it was like, oh, I read his his book, or I've listened to these podcast episodes, or whatever it is. That to me gets my attention enough to take a call, or at least connect with the team and see if there's anything there. So I think that kind of value creation first mentality was how we set this community up, and this willingness to build value for other people without expecting something. It compounds, kindness compounds over time.
How do you scale that? Because right now your community, one part of it is offline things that you're doing, like dinners and so on and so forth. But your community is so much more than what you could possibly accumulate
Olga,
offline.
You just work your fucking ass off.